Have you ever wondered if the world we see is, well, if it's really all there is? Or if maybe there's this hidden supernatural reality where these incredible battles are raging, a real cosmic conflict? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're exploring how the Bible depicts this very idea, a supernatural world where the one true God proves his absolute power over every so-called God and spiritual force out there.
The thing is, the biblical sources we're looking at, they present a world where the spiritual realm is intensely real. It's a worldview that shows God directly confronting these other spiritual forces, not to prove he exists, but to prove he alone is supreme, and to win the hearts and minds of humanity.
Now, to really wrap our heads around this conflict, we need to start with a key Hebrew word, Elohim. It's kind of this catch-all term for any being that comes from the spiritual world. So yeah, the God of the Bible is the Elohim, but that same word is also used for a whole host of other spiritual beings. Now, when the Bible talks about gods in the plural, it's not promoting polytheism, not at all. It's simply acknowledging that these other spiritual beings exist, and at the same time, it's setting the stage to show why they are absolutely nothing compared to the one true Elohim, the God of Israel.
And this makes a really crucial distinction. On one side, you have the one true God, the incomparable, uncreated creator of everything. And on the other side, you have all the other Elohim. They are created spiritual beings with limited power and authority. The biblical writers are crystal clear. One is the sovereign Lord, and the others, they're part of the created order, and you are never, ever to worship them.
This whole cosmic conflict comes into incredibly sharp focus in the story of the Exodus. I mean, the 10 plagues weren't just random terrible disasters. No, they were a systematic dismantling of Egypt's entire religious system, a direct declaration of war on its gods. And this wasn't subtle, you know. It wasn't some hidden meaning scholars had to figure out later. The biblical text states it right there, plain as day. This was a targeted judgment against the entire pantheon that held one of the world's greatest civilizations in its grip. It was designed to show Pharaoh and, frankly, the entire world exactly who was really in charge.
So let's see how this actually played out. The assault started with the Nile River, the very lifeblood of Egypt. When it turned to blood, it was a direct humiliation of Hapi, the spirit of the Nile, and Osiris, who they believed the Nile was his bloodstream. Then came the frogs, an infestation that was a direct shot at Hecate, the frog-headed goddess of fertility. Her own sacred symbol was literally turned into a curse.
And the divine assault, it just kept building. A plague of flies was an attack on a being known as the Lord of the Flies. Then, the death of the livestock. This struck right at the heart of Egyptian worship. The sacred Apis bull died. The cows that were supposedly protected by the goddess Hathor, they perished. You see the pattern? In each case, a deity's specific domain was targeted, and they were proven totally powerless to stop it.
The assault just continued. Awful boils afflicted the Egyptians, and their gods of healing and medicine, guys like Serapis and Imhotep, they could offer zero relief. Then, the supernatural storm of hail and fire rained down from the sky, a judgment that the sky goddess Nut and the agriculture god Seth were completely helpless to prevent.
But the climax of the plagues, this is where the conflict is just perfectly demonstrated. A suffocating darkness, a darkness you could feel, fell over all of Egypt for 3 whole days. This was a direct challenge to their most powerful deity, Ra, the sun god himself. And finally, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. This was the ultimate judgment. It didn't just strike the god of procreation, Min. It struck Pharaoh himself, the guy who was supposed to be the son of Ra, a living god on earth, who was just proven to be completely and utterly mortal.
Now, think about this for a moment. At the very beginning, Pharaoh's magicians, who were channeling the power of their gods, they could actually duplicate the first couple of miracles. They turned water to blood, they summoned frogs, but their power had a limit. By the 3rd plague, they were powerless, totally defeated, forced to admit this is the finger of God.
Biblical scholar Michael Heiser just frames this conflict so perfectly with this quote. It was Yahweh and his son, Israel, against the high god of Egypt, Ra, and his son, Pharaoh. It was a confrontation on every single level, divine, familial, and representational.
And this pattern of judgment, this clash against spiritual and earthly powers, it's not some one-time event. It actually echoes all the way to the very end of the biblical story, in the book of Revelation.
I mean, the parallels here are just stunning. Rivers turning to blood, a plague of awful sores, a kingdom plunged into total darkness. The final judgments we read about in Revelation clearly mirror the plagues back in Egypt. The message could not be clearer.
The God who judged the gods of Egypt is the exact same God who will execute final judgment on all spiritual and earthly rebellion.
So across all of Scripture, the message is just clear and totally consistent. From Exodus to the final battle, God is demonstrating his complete and total sovereignty. No earthly kingdom, no spiritual power, no so-called God can stand a chance against his authority.
And yet, this supernatural worldview, which is so central to the entire biblical narrative, it kind of feels like it's been misplaced or forgotten in a lot of modern circles.
You know, when the Bible gets flattened into just a book of moral lessons or nice, inspirational stories, and all the supernatural stuff gets explained away as just a metaphor, what gets lost in that translation? What have we lost?
We lose the understanding that idolatry isn't just a misguided practice. The biblical sources describe it as an actual interaction with real demonic forces. We lose the urgency of spiritual warfare. And maybe most importantly, we risk reducing God from the all-powerful, supernatural, sovereign Lord of the universe to just a distant, abstract, moral teacher.
You know, this was the conclusion that Jethro came to, Moses' father-in-law. Now, he wasn't an Israelite, but after he heard all the reports coming out of Egypt, he saw the evidence and he made this declaration. The demonstration of power was so undeniable, it convinced even outsiders. The plagues weren't just about punishment, they were a revelation of who is truly in charge of the entire cosmos.
So the biblical accounts, they consistently present a reality where the spiritual world is active and God's authority over it is absolute. And the question this really leaves us with is, do our own worldviews make room for that reality? Do we see God as just a distant moral teacher, or as the sovereign, supernatural Lord over all creation, both visible and invisible?